This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, so good morning again, everyone. Thank you especially to Rick Pate, who is the Commissioner for the Alabama Department of Agriculture and Industries, for joining us this morning. Commissioner, really appreciate you. I know we had you lined up a while back and then found out you were on vacation. So thank you for taking time from your family vacation to join us. Really appreciate you. Uh, thanks for coming. And then there's also a quick bio that I've got for Commissioner Pate. So Rick Pate grew up working on his family's cattle and poultry operations in Lowndes County, where he learned the value of hard work and perseverance. Because of his roots in agriculture, he studied horticulture and received his bachelor's degree in 1978 from Auburn University's College of Agriculture, War Eagle. Pate put his degree in determination to work and started Pate Landscape Company, incorporated over 36 years ago. Even though Pate has spent most of his time operating Pate Landscape, he never let go of his love and connection to the farm in Lowndes County. He had a purebred Charolais herd of his own, but at the death of his father in 2012, he took over the family cattle operation, Pate Charolais Ranch. Growing up on a farm and having a cattle operation, running landscape business, and serving as mayor of a small rural town has given Pate a unique perspective to bring to the office of Ag Commissioner. He also has a genuine concern for the future of agriculture and the people of Alabama. He's mindful that by 2050, farmers will have to do double food production to meet the needs of the world, and that will take visionary leaders who understand we would have to work smarter, not just harder, to achieve these goals. He has plans to do his part by working with the department staff, agricultural stakeholders, and the people of Alabama to make a difference. So that is Commissioner Pate's bio. And with no further ado, I will turn it over to Commissioner Rick Pate.
Well, thanks, Will. It's like I said, unusual circumstance. I was actually up in Gadsden last month speaking to leadership Gadsden, so that was a treat. And this is also, I'm sorry, I'm actually at a niece's wedding. It's not a pure vacation, but it is down in Cancun. So yeah, but I apologize for being in a hotel room, but I looked all around and really couldn't find anywhere else I could guarantee would be quiet. So anyway, so just to get started, I will say this is the first time I've been on lots of Zoom calls, been on lots of go to meeting calls, but most of them have been discussions and not me just talking. So I really need some feedback from you. I hope everybody will join in, because yeah, this won't be as interesting if I just talk for 30, 45 minutes. But I tried to ask Will a little bit about who I was talking to. It doesn't sound like many of y'all are really farmers, so probably business people. And so I might not get down in the weeds as much as I could as far as some of the ag programs going on right now. But I thought, what would create some value for y'all? I think most of y'all probably don't know what all we do as the Department of Ag. I think most of you probably don't understand what we went through as the Department of Agriculture during COVID and the whole critical infrastructure designation, what that did to us. And then maybe I can talk a little bit about agriculture and going forward, because obviously Etowah County, well, there's not a county in the state that agriculture is not important. But obviously I was up there a couple of months ago at poultry processing in Gadsden, and so poultry is huge, but all of agriculture is. And then maybe talk sort of close about food and what we're seeing as far as how people are thinking about the food. So let me just start off, and I probably need to rewrite that bio. I think that was what I had before I even got elected, but anyway, I need to talk to Annabeth a little more about that. But let me tell you a little about the Department of Ag. So we have about 350 employees, and it's good to see Representative Isbell. Of course, y'all got strong leadership up there with Representative Lipscomb and Representative Nordgreen, and then of course Senator Jones has got to know him. So I've enjoyed getting to know all y'all's legislative team, and they've been super supportive of everything we've tried to do. But all state agencies are not created equal. Obviously, a lot of them are cabinet level appointments of the governor. And of course, with the Department of Ag being a constitutional officer and sort of somewhat independent of the governor, other than obviously her and the legislature have a big say on our budget. But we're about a $36 million state agency. We get about $8.5 million from the general fund, and the rest we get through fees or licenses and things like that. We really consist of 6 primary units, and every one of them. And I was saying that all state agencies aren't created equal. We have huge regulatory responsibility as far as food safety, animal health, and some agencies have none. I mean, I'm not picking on them because they're a great agency, but the Alabama Forestry Commission has 0 regulatory responsibility. They're to educate and protect. They got important roles. I'm not saying that. They're just don't have regulatory responsibilities as opposed to what we do, which are huge. But anyway, our sort of 6 divisions that we mainly count is towards animal health. Obviously, everybody's proud of what Toyota Mazda that located in Limestone County, but our poultry industry in Alabama is so huge, it just dwarfs any of these car manufacturing facilities individually. And even our poultry industry is so huge. We're a net importer of corn in Alabama. Even though you think you see a lot of corn being grown, we don't even grow enough corn, I think, for feed 70% of our chickens. So the poultry industry is really a huge industry in Alabama. But anyway, so animal health is a huge deal as far as the economy in Alabama. Obviously, there's any number of diseases. If y'all are following, I assume y'all are chamber people, so you kind of follow stuff. But it's this huge issue in Asia with the African swine flu that's decimating pork. In China, I think they might have killed as many as 200 million swine so far. Of course, all of that plays into America's ag economy because obviously they need pork, but they need less corn or soybeans because you got fewer swine to feed. But anyway, we're all vigilant about animal health, and that's a huge responsibility we have. We've got all the responsibilities for plants and pesticides. So, well, pesticides kind of explains itself. We regulate all the chemicals that are sold in Alabama. We regulate the people who spray chemicals in Alabama, other than maybe homeowners. And then, of course, a lot of products are restricted the homeowners can't use. And then we have a huge responsibility about plants. We're going to circle back later and talk about the Chinese seeds that you probably heard about. But we have in the plant, obviously everybody knows about fire ants, so I use them as an example. But fire ants came in through the Port of Mobile, and of course they tried to restrict it to Alabama, and then they tried to restrict it to Mississippi and Georgia and Florida. But that goes on all the time, not just with fire ants. And still, fire ants are controlled to, I don't remember how many states, but it's not in every state. And so obviously a state that didn't have fire ants doesn't want us sending a plant, whether let's just say it's an azalea that's got soil with it across state lines without it being inspected by our state and their state and certifying that it doesn't have fire ants in it. But there's lots of other issues. We just had a situation that just came up 3 months ago. The state of Florida's had this disease, bacteria, fungus virus called citrus greening that works on citrus plants. We had been able to keep it in Alabama. We've gotten it in now in the Baldwin, Mobile counties, and so we were having to make decisions. Do we quarantine the whole state? Do we just quarantine those counties to try to contain that disease until we can maybe eradicate it, but work on that. So those are kind of decisions we make in our department. So animal health, plant, pesticides, of course, food safety and ag compliance. So we have a really DEA certified food and drug lab on our campus there in Montgomery, and it's really a good one. That's what we use, the same lab for our hemp program as far as testing the hemp. But But we have a lot of responsibilities for, expired food on shelves in grocery stores or small country stores, or you wouldn't believe it, but a tornado comes through, and if it came through your community or wherever it comes through, then we have actually a couple of people that sort of work with emergency management. We have to have people out in those communities as soon as that storm passes to see where, and of course, the power company's notifying us that who's lost power, how many people without power, and then we have to go tell those store owners, don't open those refrigerated things. You've got 12 hours or 18 hours, wherever it is. If you can keep that stuff below such and such, and you can, keep it refrigerated. Otherwise, it's got to be dumped. And then we'll go and make sure it's dumped and something that's is put on it to keep anybody else. So anyway, lots of responsibilities as far as food safety and ag compliance. And then we have the responsibility for weights and measures. And so some people have seen those stickers on the gas pumps, and that's probably the most noticeable. What we're doing is guaranteeing that you'll get a gallon of gas. We have nothing to do with the price. We do have some responsibilities as far as the quality of the gas, that it's what it says it is. And so we test some amount of gas as a representative sample, but not just those weights and measures, but you think about the scales at your grocery store, the scales at the sand and gravel business that you buy from. Really, anything that enters commerce that uses weights or measures, we have the responsibility to certify it. In fact, I was watching something on YouTube, and some kid had caught some world record or some sort of record fish in the Gulf, and they were bringing it to the scales and gonna weigh it, and they weighed it, and then after they weighed it, they turned the scale around, and there on the back of the scale was the Department of Ag sticker, and that gave them the credibility to say, it was measured fairly. Also, we have responsibility for the farmers market. Some people don't realize every little place is selling stuff off the back of trucks, not necessarily a real farmer's market. To really be a farmer's market, you have to sell Alabama, and we designate, certify true farmer's markets. And of course, they can take SNAP, and we got some other federal programs that they can take vouchers from if they're a true farmer's market. But they're supposed to be selling Alabama grown products, and that's what you see. Sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not. And then that same department's got a responsibility for farm promotion, and I'm gonna talk about that just a second, what we've sort of done with that. And then sort of one of the big ones is sort of outside our budget, but it's in our department, but we call it shipping point, but we're responsible for the grading and really all the peanuts produced in the wiregrass. And then we settle disputes like in Birmingham, there's a couple of major distribution points. If fruit comes in and purchaser thinks it's not, wasn't in good shape, we would be the ones that came out that day and made a decision, the product needs to be returned or it's satisfactory. But anyway, so those are our 6 major divisions. Animal health is 1, plants and pesticides, second, food safety, ag compliance being the 3rd, weights, measures, farm promotions, and farmers market, and then shipping port. Now we have started a new one with Gil and the legislature's help, started a new program going forward called Sweet Grown Alabama. And so hopefully maybe y'all have heard of it, but I realized when I was out on the campaign trail that people were asking a lot more questions about their food than sometimes I could even answer. And the types of questions they won't know who grew the food, what had been put on it, a lot of questions like that I didn't know what to do with that information. So then after I'd been commissioner about a month or so, actually My head of farm promotion, Don Wamos, came in one day and said Publix wanted to feature Alabama grown products in, I think, all 74, 75 of their stores in the state of Alabama. Well, I said, well, that's good. We'll sell a lot of Alabama grown products. And he said, well, no, it's not good. And I said, well, why wouldn't that be a good thing? And he said, well, we don't have any way. We're not branded. We don't have any way to know what's Alabama grown or what was grown in Florida or Georgia or wherever. And so we spent about a year and we got it stood up end of 19, sort of third quarter of 19. But a separate 501c6, I think, organization called Sweet Grown Alabama. And so it sells modestly priced memberships to local growers, and it lets them use the ID, Sweet Grown Alabama logo, lets them market themselves as a Alabama grown products. And then we've gotten about 8 or 9 big sponsors like us, and the Farmers Federation, First South Ag Credit, Alabama Ag Credit, and anyway, about 8 different people that are normally involved, Power South in the ag community, and to put up $25,000. And so we got that sort of stood up now. We've gotten a young woman that was an ag communication graduate from Auburn hired, Ellie Watson, and so she's got an office in our building there in Montgomery, and that seems to be doing well. And it certainly with COVID, and it's just not true in Alabama. I've been on the phone with most every ag commissioner in America, and everybody, if you're in Maryland, you're wanting Maryland products. If you're in Kentucky, people are wanting to buy as local as they can. And we've seen that in lots of products, whether it's beef but especially in fruit and produce. And people are asking those questions, where that food is coming from. Moving on sort of out of what the department does to what the challenges we've had with this coronavirus. Obviously, immediately when the Homeland Security declared the entire, and it was important they said that, the entire food supply chain critical infrastructure. And there's only 3 industries really given that, but they didn't say farmers, they didn't say grocery stores, they said the entire food supply chain. So anyway, that created some real challenges to us. If y'all remember that period, which is going back to sort of March, April, people didn't know what that meant. You had certain cities in Jefferson County and other were starting to pass restrictions on people going to work. And so a lot of people were coming to us for guidance, even though the governor didn't really give us that authority to sort of start picking and choosing what industries to stay open. But anyway, we did kind of, and it's not always real intuitive who's critical to the food supply chain. Like I used the example of the pest control people. Well, you say, well, why should pest control people be allowed to stay open? Well, yeah, is it critical that they treat, your house for cockroaches? Well, the food supply, we can protect the farmer, we can protect the trucking, we can protect the processing, we protect the trucking again, protect the warehousing, and then protect the grocery stores. But if we don't keep that food safe while it's in storage, then we'll have diseases much worse than COVID. COVID won't even be on the radar as far as some of the problems we could have as a society without the pest control people. But anyway, my point being, we got sucked into all of that. People, if you remember, were concerned they could drive to work, and they wanted a pass to tell whoever they in their mind thought was going to pull them over and stop them from going to work that they were essential. And so there was about 2 or 3 weeks where it was just crazy is about as good a word as I can think of. And I kept trying to tell people, I don't have the authority. I can write you a note, or the department can. And some states did that just to get people to leave them alone. But anyway, eventually that kind of worked itself out. Of course, y'all remember, you know, the grocery store situation. And so people started, of course, they ran out of toilet paper almost immediately, and then they started running out of poultry, and then they run out of ground beef, and then they run out of poultry, and so then, because y'all, hopefully you're not aware. If you're not aware of this, and I did my job, well, that's when all of that. First, the problem was all the people overbuying. The statistics are showing that people overbought about 40%. Well, the system's not made to provide 40% more. I mean, grocery stores have this thing nailed down, how much everything they're going to sell in a week. And so anyway, so you got people overbuying. Then all of a sudden they got COVID in some of those beef packing plants, slaughter facilities in the Midwest. Well, all of a sudden now they can't process 50%. There's higher demand than normal. Well, and so then I get a call. I remember it was Saturday, April the 4th. It was a Saturday, and I was at home, and there's Aaron Beasley with the cattleman said all the stockyards are fixing to shut down. I said, well, I can't have all the stockyards shut down when there's no ground beef in the grocery store. Just imagine how that looks to people. So they don't have ground beef in the grocery store, and yet we're not allowing people to sell cattle. I said, this is so non-intuitive. And so I got on the phone, started calling the stockyards. And so I understood they were having some issues with the processing plants in the Midwest, and they really just needed a pause. But the word that sent out originally was that it was because of the governor's orders, and and I just had to talk them to take all that stuff off the website, because that just wasn't true. That wasn't what the issue was. There was some processing capacity issues in the Midwest, and so we were able to talk. I think Alabama's got 22, 23 stockyards. Everything in North Alabama stayed open. We did have 8 in South Alabama closed for a week, and then the next week only 2 were still closed. But hopefully you've seen now again ample supplies in your grocery stores. But we had to get through that same little bump, which kind of had that same. If you remember, because some of y'all remember some of this, a lot of stuff was going on with me, but there was a point there where they got the COVID in some of those beef processing. The president came out and they said he did it for liability reasons, but ordered them to stay open. And so what that did, gave them some liability protection if they sent their employees back in there and they got sick. So then that put pressure on us too. So now in North Alabama, where we've got a ton of poultry processing, they were having the same issues at that time. And so I'm talking to the Poultry and Egg Association, Johnny Adams, and their people, and they're saying our processors say they're taking care of the people at work. The problem is we got too many people live together, they're riding to work together. We get COVID, even if we protect them at work, at the processing plant. And so we got Director Hastings and EMA to give us 200,000 masks, and I think he gave us 60,000 gloves and 25 cases of sanitizer. And so we went on this tour. I say we, me, and a couple in my office, and a couple of Poultry Egg, and we coordinated with the companies. We went to all, I think 18 of the 19 poultry processors in the state of Alabama, and tried to give all their employees at least 7 to 10 masks, gloves for them to take home and then start protecting themselves if that was actually the case. And I actually think it did help. And so it seemed like the problem sort of went down once employees started doing a better job at home. I will say, a lot was coming out on the internet about that same time too, about poultry being, because we use the term depopulated, poultry being euthanized, and milk being poured out, vegetables being plowed under, and some of that went on. There's no doubt about it, but none of that went on in Alabama. I mean, no poultry was euthanized. We got close. There was a couple times when our processors couldn't handle any more chickens, and chicken's kind of different than cattle. You can't put an extra 2 pounds on a chicken. They don't want it anymore. Sort of like catfish. They don't want a 8-pound catfish. They got a size they want less than 5 pounds. And once you get bigger than that, they just don't want it. And so, but we didn't. So none of that happened. I did hear one field of cabbage might have gotten plowed under, but anyway, I can live with that. But no livestock was euthanized, no milk poured out, no um, vegetables were plowed under in Alabama that I'm aware of. All right, let me talk a little bit about seeds. And so hopefully everybody's heard about Chinese seeds, but if you hadn't, we got about 600 or so packages of seed got sent into the state. It actually happened on a Saturday. I think I maybe first heard about it arriving in some states on a Friday. So by Saturday, I'm starting to hear it was coming into Alabama. And then by Monday, and I really shouldn't take any credit for this, but because my folks had sort of mobilized and gotten a plan up because we got such a good uh, food and drug lab, and we've got such a good seed lab. They said, well, let's just pick them up because we don't know what they are. They could obviously be invasive. They could potentially have viruses in them, something that could get into some of our, could potentially get in the poultry industry, cotton, soybean, could have viruses, bacteria, or it could have some contaminant on it that hurt people. And so anyway, the decision was made, and so we sort of set up a hotline and a website that day, and people started contacted us, and we started picking up seeds. And so I think we picked up close to 600 different packages of seed. Surprisingly to me, at least, by the time we got there, 15% of the people had already planted the seeds. And so we had to actually dig the plants up with the soil that was around it. But our lab didn't find anything harmful on the seed. I think they decided about 50% of them were wildflower seed, maybe 40% were vegetables, sometimes a couple of them were watermelon seeds, a couple of them were tomato. The packages would be pretty uniform as far as all the seeds in them would be the same, but every package would be a little different. So anyway, but we were one of the few states that did that. Most states took the position as a USDA and an APHIS Plant Health Inspection Service issue and let USDA handle it, which meant nothing happened because they were on a COVID lockdown. So they weren't really able to go pick up seeds, and their labs were, regional. So we wouldn't have gotten probably back information that was specific to Alabama. Our seeds would have been aggregated with other seeds from other states. So anyway, I do think that was good. We got that done for you. And so sort of wrapping up what's going on at the department, we've kind of transitioned now because everybody knows where we are with the COVID virus. But everybody should be aware the state of Alabama got almost $1.9 billion. The legislature and the governors kind of worked out some formula for dispersing it. But anyway, we negotiated on behalf of our farmers to get 26 million of that to be given back to agricultural producers, which is not really that much in 1.9 billion. But anyway, we appreciate it. So I'm not complaining because that's what was the deal we made. But anyway, so we've got some money in there to help some process. So we want to increase Alabama's processing some meat processing, beef. We've got some money in there for catfish processing. Most of y'all might not know we're the second largest catfish producing state in the country, as well as the second largest poultry producing state. And then we've got some money in there for some vegetable and fruit hubs. One of the problems that vegetable growers have is not they can't grow it and sell it, but the way they want packages is not really the way grocery stores or people want it. So we need some places people could take a head of lettuce and somebody could wash it and maybe chop it up and put it in a bag. And so we're hoping we got some money for those folks too. And then after we get those three processed, we sort of got some money, we think, for most of the eligible crops that were damaged. We got some money in there for cattle industry, where really a fair amount of 10 million for them. And anyway, all the different industries that we think. So with that, I guess the last thing I'd say is, what's the future of agriculture? Agriculture is struggling, and I don't know. Our problem in Alabama and in America with agriculture is we're just so flipping efficient, and so it's sort of like the story. What does a dairy farmer do when prices are real good for milk? He milks more cows. Or what does the dairy farmer do when prices are real bad? He milks more cows. It's kind of that same mentality in agriculture. If prices are bad, they think they got to do more, and if they're good, they want to do more. And so we just keep with fewer inputs, fewer chemicals, fewer everything, producing more every year. Our efficiency gets better, and so obviously it's one of our real shining stars as far as America's economy, because this plays a big role in our exports and helping to bring our trade imbalances down. But anyway, we just produce so much more than we can eat in this country. One of the challenges, and if y'all have followed the news or if you're on Facebook, you've probably seen some of the ads. If you've had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and ever used Roundup, call this number or something. Of course, Roundup you can still buy. That was some study in Europe said that there was some issue with Roundup, but really we've had no study in the United States to ever prove any of that. And so, but obviously you don't have to have proof to sue people. And so Monsanto and now Bayer are huge companies. And so, but this last year we've had this huge ordeal for our cotton soybean farmers as far as dicamba. We had a court in the western part of the United States. I can't remember if it was in the California, Nevada road, that you couldn't, buy the seeds that have been developed to sort of that were resistant to spraying with dicamba, and so that's created a real hardship. But our position is, and as a country, we have done a much better job than Europe. I'm good with it wherever the science takes us. And so if the science, obviously there's been some nasty stuff that's been sprayed out over the last 50 years, and hopefully we've stopped that. But if we have issues like that and there's products need to come off that to make our agriculture sustainable, then that needs to happen. But we need to follow the science and not get into this sort of European model of public opinion formulating public policy, but it just needs to follow the science. And so I guess the last thing is talking about food. I really think that ship sailed on people caring so much more about the food. You can just see the way food and restaurants market themselves nowadays. And so I think you're going to continue to see people want to know more about the food, where it comes from, who grew it, anything about it. In fact, I told before I left to come down here, told them, I said, we need to get a nutritionist to come in and really make sure we can talk food correctly as far as, because that's the way consumers now talk about food. And I said, we got to quit talking about it in farming terms and talk about it in food terms, because that's the way people see it. But anyway, absolutely love what I do. Appreciate so much the opportunity to be Commissioner of Agriculture. It kind of hit me at the right time in my life. I'd been mayor 14 years, and like Will said, been business 38. My kids were both got two sons. They were both out of college and both doing well. And so it was just a good challenge at the right time in my life. And yeah, I look forward to coming in every day. And I'll say this, because of our role as far as the critical infrastructure, we've been at work every day. I mean, some state agencies I know still are at work. I was talking to a nephew that works for ADM, and they go in one day a week and rotate what day. Yeah, but I've been to the office. Well, I'm not there today, but other than this trip, every day since March, Monday to Friday, if it wasn't a holiday, except for 3, I think, and I had to work out those 3 days. So we are busy. We're fully functional, and but anyway, with that, Will, I'll turn it back over to you and see if you got any questions.
Yeah, well, Commissioner Pate, thank you again so much for taking the time this Friday morning to join us. We really appreciate you and the work that you guys do as well. I think it's important to spread the word about it and educate people about what all you guys do and what all you guys are involved with. So really appreciate that. If you have any questions, you guys feel free to put those in the chat. Here's the link where the recorded webinar will be at later today, along with all our other recorded webinars. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to put any questions in before we wrap up.
Hey, Will, this is Jonathan. I've got kind of a long-winded question, if you don't mind, if I could ask it.
Go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Pate, thank you for taking some time on your Cancun trip to come talk to us. So we do appreciate that. My name is Jonathan Tang. I'm in the petroleum industry, so we're very familiar with weights and measures. Also, former chairman of the Petroleum and Convenience Store Marketers of Alabama, and just kind of wanted to further understand. It's kind of a gray area for us as operators, the weights and measures process. If you could potentially help me understand specifically, you know, when we get a complaint and the weights and measures inspectors come out to our site. Don't mean to sound negative, but we're almost guilty until proven innocent. We're the big bad gas station, and we're selling water, and our gas isn't right. We're cheating everyone left and right. And I just kind of, you know, want to understand more of the thought process because we try to be 100% compliant 100% time, and it just sometimes gets a little bit, you know, head scratcher here and there. So if you could comment on that, I would appreciate it.
Well, I'd love to. Yeah. So you know, I've only been in there a little less than 2 years, but I ran my platform when I ran for Commissioner of Ag. It was, you know, people can talk about a lot of different things, and a lot of people run against taxes. That's really never been my thing as a business person for the last 38 years. It's been the government was an impediment to being successful. The federal government was, the state government, city governments were. I mean, and all I'm doing is feeding taxes into all of them. I mean, I ought to get a thank you note every once in a while saying, you know, we were able to pick up garbage or whatever, keep the lights on in the city hall because of the great work you're doing, hiring more people. And so that's a huge deal to me. If you can call my office, I can. You know, I mean, my number is 334-240-7102. If our people ever treat any of your folks like they're guilty with no facts, I mean, my experience has been that more than likely that since I've been there and I've been aware of instances, almost every time it hadn't been the petroleum company's fault. That you know, there's unreasonable consumers out there, and it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. I had Pate Landscape, which is commercial landscape irrigation, but I also had a business, a Scott's Lawn Service franchise, where we treated people's yards. Well, you go into 20 people's yards and you got 3 crews, that's 60 people's property you touch every day. I don't know what that percentage is. There's some out of that you just never can make happy. And so I mean, there are people, good companies like yours, that want us to keep the bad guys to make them do right, because you're trying to do right. And that's my goal. Yeah, there's 5% of the folks out there that if they know we won't check them, they'll try to skirt the edges. But 95% of people want to do right. If you'll, a lot of times it's just like in my own business, like the problems I ran into were things that I wasn't aware of. And I'm married to a CPA. It's not like I'm sitting there, with no knowledge of how to run a business, and we still mess up. And whether it was the Department of Labor would come out to a job site and a guy would mess up and dig in a ditch and tell the Department of Labor person they were a carpenter and they've never done carpenter work for me, and all of a sudden I'm not paying them carpenter. Anyway, I understand, I feel your pain. So I'm saying in general, that's easy to say. You give me specific examples when that happens to you, and I'll follow up on it. There's certainly nobody should make you feel like, or any companies, are guilty until they are guilty. And then once they are, of course, there are repercussions. Even if you know what's right and you don't do right, there's, penalties and things you have to pay, but that's only fair. Yeah, but we kind of work. I mean, the way it is nowadays. We don't have inspectors like we did 20 years ago. And so a lot of the way we catch things is people turn people in. I mean, that's not true of just petroleum. That's true landscapers and pesticide users, but I'm saying that's just the reality of the day. And to be honest, people have learned they don't call the switchboard at the park bag. They'll call for me and tell me something, and that's fine. I'm not begrudging it. I just gave you the number that rings on my desk, and so I don't mind it. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna have to get somebody else to go check on it. But yeah, the poultry, Bart Fletcher's group, and I don't know if that's the organization you were saying, was really one of the first groups to support me. I mean, when I just got in the race. So yeah, I mean, the few times I've had a problem that I thought was going to escalate, I've called Bart up and said, what's going on here? Why am I getting these kind of calls? So hopefully, I know you've been treated like that, because I was treated like that when I was in business. But if you tell me in the 2 years since I've been there, somebody's treating somebody any worse than professional, I'll certainly look into it.
Do we have any more questions? I see David Hook said, great presentation. David is the director of the Industrial Development Authority here in the area.
Hey, Will, can
Hey.
I ask a question? Because I didn't know how to send my question in otherwise.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Rick, I'm glad you're doing well down in Cancun. I was just, where's your flowered shirt? But
well, it's actually hanging up in there.
okay. But
different
listen,
names for a Mexican wedding shirt. Guama or something anyway. But I actually have one. But
what I was going to ask, on those seeds that came in, they came in from China. Did y'all ever trace the final source, or were you able to? And what was the premise for them sending those? Or did y'all?
I'll tell you what I know. So the FBI was in touch with us almost from day one. We were getting calls. We probably talked to the FBI, and so we worked with them to give them access to our internal information. So as we were accumulating data, what the public could see was one thing, like how many samples we picked up, but what they were, and in a real time, they were hooked into our website. And so, but we don't, have any police authority. We don't have anybody that carries guns or has to arrest. And so that was as far as we had the ability to. We just had to prove that it wasn't invasive, and then it wasn't anything in there that it contamination. And then we just left it to the FBI. But obviously, it's a criminal. Even if it's just seeds, if you go back to some of the things I said earlier, it's still criminal. I mean, you can't send seeds from Georgia to Alabama. You certainly cannot label a jewelry, and that's what this was done. Was that on the package jewelry, and so supposedly was passed by custom people that came into the country, and so even if it just turns out it's a bunch of tomato seeds and watermelon seeds and flower seeds, it's still a criminal act, and somebody they'll track it down and figure it out. But yeah, you'll probably know when I do. You know, they're probably in the news. They're not sort of when you deal with the FBI, it's just a one-way street. You give them information and they don't. So I don't know. Some people say it's a brushing scam where people are trying to move up on. It's a mighty expensive way. I don't know that I believe that that's really cost effective to send all those seeds, because 600, there were big packages that were fairly expensive to send, and they did that pretty uniformly across the state of Alabama, and then they did it in most states. And so, yeah, what we're trying to be careful of is if I tell people this was all safe, and then 6 months from now this happens again, people will go, oh yeah, there's nothing to those seeds, and then the next time they might not be as innocent. But anyway, to answer your question, Gil, once we determined they weren't invasive and they weren't contaminated, that was the end of our responsibility.
All right, thank you.
Well, we're coming up on time. Do we have any more questions, or would someone like to unmute themselves and ask the question? Okay, well, I don't see any more questions in the comment box or anyone unmuting themselves. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So Commissioner Pate, appreciate you coming on the call this morning to talk to us. I appreciate our attendees as well.
I appreciate it, and you just let me get out of this coat and get in my bathing suit now. Thank y'all so much.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and cut the recording off. You guys can find the recording later today on our website. You guys take care and have a great weekend.